Right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to my channel, Warren's Team Talk. I'm absolutely delighted to say that I've been joined by the one and only Mr. Kenny Ken, and I'm absolutely delighted to have him on. He was here a couple of weeks ago, and we had a chat, and I've been looking forward to this ever since we had that last one because it was fantastic. So, yeah, thanks very much for coming on, Kenny. Would you like to tell everyone about what's going on and who you are and all the rest of it?
Well, yeah, it's just a continuation of the discussion we had 2 weeks ago, and we were just talking about my Arsenal journey, and there's so much ground to cover because I think we only got as far as George Graham, and we didn't, and because I think when you talk about Arsenal Football Club, there's three important men who've made this club really great. That's Herbert Chapman and George Graham and Arsene Wenger. There's other managers who, poor old George Allison doesn't get a mention, and poor old Bertie Mee doesn't get a mention. But the reason why they don't get a mention is because if you look at the three men we're talking about, they built dynasties and built teams, and in some cases, one of them divided opinion, spectacularly, especially from the time we got to the Emirates. One made us into one of the powerhouse and rewrote the Sleeping Giant. And one, no doubt in my mind, created the Arsenal that we know in terms of like the standards that we should be aspiring to at Arsenal Football Club. And that was, ex-Tottenham player, born in Sheffield, Herbert Chapman. So all those three Arsenal managers, whenever you talk about Arsenal Football Club, you can't talk about anyone but those three men. You just can't. You can't. It'd be neglectful. It'd be neglectful and probably a bit spiteful as well to ignore all their contributions. I know some Arsenal fans are, like myself, who probably have issues. We're going to discuss this anyway with Arsene, haven't got over and probably haven't forgotten or forgiven his last few years. But there's some Arsenal fans who, because they're such massive fans of Arsene, forget, that George, was the kind of predecessor and probably the one who set great foundations for Arsene, but because of the bung and the fact that he went to Tottenham, people want to forget that. But you got Tottenham fans, Pat Jennings, go Spurs. There's a suite named after him. The North London Derby. He was the match day ambassador. Even when he when he played for Arsenal, he was still living in a Tottenham area around Broxbourne. So, and he's, I'm no doubt if you went to his house during the time of his life, there'll be Tottenham memorabilia there as well. He was never Arsenal. He's always Tottenham. We didn't mind that because he gave us great service and he's brilliant for us. But, that's how it is.
Yeah. I mean, he was an absolute legend for this club. And, there were other Tottenham players that came here as well, wasn't there? Young and people
Willie
like
Young,
that. That's one argument I was going. Do you know what I mean?
Willie Young came to us from Spurs as well, and he actually came to us along with Terry Neal, because remember Terry Neal after he lost his, I think he was at Hull City in the 70s. After Bill Nicholson left Spurs, he thinks around 74, 75. The Spurs board offered Terry Neal a job because I think they just wanted a bit of a breath of fresh air, because I think around that time, between in the mid-70s, Spurs and Arsenal were struggling. People don't seem to realise that from about 74 up until 76, they were not in the top half of the table. They were flirting with, relegation. Like, for instance, one team who finished, it was the places that Spurs and Arsenal were finishing between 14th and 15th. And, finally, Spurs standards went all the way down in 77 when they finally got relegated. But obviously, we had Terry Neal improved, and that's what it is. But, moving forward, we talk about, the last embers of the George Graham days. After Copenhagen, things started to go wrong for us in terms of George, because I think for me, that's when I became frustrated. I was becoming frustrated in 92, 93, because I generally believed after the finish we had to the season in 92 that Arsenal would actually go on and win the Premier League and actually challenge. And but unfortunately, Man United started playing beautiful football. Norwich City, I know, was strong side under Mike Walker, and then Jack Walker had all his millions of pounds, and that's where we fell behind. And I got a bit frustrated, and I started to resent Ian Wright a bit, not the person, but the way he played. So there was times when we didn't have a midfield, didn't have wingers, and it was just the ball over the top for Ian Wright. And we were successful winning 2 cups, which was never been done, and then got to the final of the European Cup.
Thing, wasn't it? I mean, that time, I always felt, Kenny, that our midfield wasn't great at all.
Well, not at all. And we had Johnny Jensen, and we had Selly, we had David Ilya, and by that time, Anders Limpar was being phased out the side, and he was, it was only about a year and a bit. He went to Everton, and then we were getting players like Eddie McGoldrick, those sort of players. They were just not Arsenal players who just were never good enough for the football club. And then, the quality of play even up front was questionable. And I always thought George just bought defensive players, and let's face it, in that George's last season that he didn't complete, 94, 95, the football was terrible. It's awful. We lost to Man United. We lost to Leeds and QPR in the space of a week, both at home, 3-1. So it was one of those things where, we had the Paul Merson scandal, where, basically someone he trusted was going to sell a story about him, and the FA were going to probably do something about his off-the-field activities. So he did that famous press conference. And then we had Rune Hauger, which basically finished George Graham as for a lot of people, was someone who's important to Arsenal's history. Because I still think to this day that George Graham was set up. Because, Chestnut. Yeah.
Sorry, Kenny, go on. Sorry.
I saw what you're saying. So, yeah, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, do you think that they would have sacked George by the end of the season if he hadn't have had the bung scandal?
It's an interesting situation because, the reports after George, was dismissed after the Premier League inquiry was that, there was reports coming from George himself was saying that he would have resigned at the end of the season anyway because he felt that, he was only going to be able to take the team as far as he can go. So George, that is all in print. It's not me making up rumours. I remember it. Everyone calls Mr. Google. And when anything happens to Arsenal, I always remember it. I even go back to remember, the situation with Alan Sunderland in 1982 when he was involved in a car accident. Someone got killed. I remember the situation with Raphael Mead, when he was accused of gross misconduct with a lady. So I go back that far in terms of memory. So if I'm remembering that back in the 80s, I'm not going to forget the fact that George, himself expressed, to the public that he was going to leave at the end of the season anyway. It's all in print. But the fact is that at that time, managers were taking bungs. And it was well documented for the club. It wasn't just managers. The kit man was making a lot of money. And that it wasn't just a kit man at Arsenal. It was a kit man all over the place. Agents weren't prevalent in football at the time. Basically, it was basically the clubs. Managers weren't earning the sort of money they're earning now, to the extent that, Sir Alex Ferguson in 96 was still complaining about his salary at Man United. So they weren't earning money. Everyone was at it. Atkinson was at it. Brian Clough was definitely at it. And George Graham was just doing what all managers do. The clubs turn a blind eye to it. It was the only reason why this became an issue is because of Alan Sugar's, court case with Terry Venables. Alan Sugar's a businessman. He, when he bought Spurs and he saw the situation where, the loans where Spurs were loaning out money to the players and they won't get this money back. Players like Paul Allen, Gaz and all those sort of players. So it was one of the things where he opened his mouth probably too wide and the Premier League investigated Spurs. And obviously, remember that time when they kicked him out of the FA Cup and they tried to dog him points and Alan Sugar went down the legal route and it was within this time, Spurs were able to sort of stay in the FA Cup and get their points back. But there was punishments against Spurs. So all of that kind of culminated. And obviously the Premier League were putting pressure on David Dean, who was a member of the high table at the Premier League and the FA. So Arsenal were forced to sack George. But, there was other situations, there was off the field things. There was an investigation as well, with one of our players. We don't want to go into it, but I know about it, you know about it, but I will speak off there. And it was all those things which just kind of just culminated into an almighty crash. And obviously rumours were abound about, players like Tony Adams. And remember Tony Adams and Ray Parlour getting on the stage with the strippers and all both pissed out of their heads. So it was all this kind of bang. And it just, George had to go.
Exactly. And, this business about bungs in football as well, it went on a long time after.
Definitely, 100%.
There was a TV documentary about it was it 10 years ago? That documentary, like when they went in undercover and whatnot, and and it went on with Big Sam, didn't it? And the England job.
Definitely with England. But if you look at the situation, Gary Monk, when he was at Middlesbrough, it's well documented that he was trying to get his age. He was trying to get players to go with his agent. So basically, his agent was basically controlling everything. You're not trying to say that he won't get a cut out of it. There's always someone in football, even today, who are getting a cut out of something. Back in the day, footballers were before the money was Sky. We only had two TV stations showing the beautiful game, and we had a DVD deal from about 1983. The first live game was Spurs versus Nottingham Forest, 1983. Spurs beat Forest 2-1, and it was a case where they wasn't showing live games all the time. And then what's happening? Both channels had live games. When there was a TV strike in 85, 86, where they couldn't agree the football deal, and then all the way in ITV got the exclusive rights in 89, so 88, year we won the league at Anfield, and it was a case where only 5 clubs were making the money. So it was one of those things where we didn't have Sky, who smashed the door down and enriched not just every club but the game in itself. And then so the money was there, but it wasn't there in such a way where big sponsors were getting involved, because the game didn't know how to promote itself. We had the situation with the hooligans, the fact that we were kicked out of Europe. So in terms of all this money, I get why it was happening, why there was a lot of irregularities. But, it was one of those things where, somehow we managed to get to the European Cup with this cup final, losing to Zaragoza. And then after that, it was like Bruce Wilk came along. Let's face it, between me and you and everyone who's watching this, I never was having Bruce Wilk as Arsenal manager. Not because I thought he was bad. It just seemed weird.
It's a recurring theme though with Arsenal, isn't it, Kenny? Like, if they can't get the man they want immediately when one goes, they will do that. They will put someone in for a year or something and then get rid of them. I mean, they've done it with Bruce Wilk. They did it with Unai Emery. And they did it with Don Howe as well, I think.
Yeah, I think Don Howe's one was a very interesting situation, because I think with Don Howe is that they were interviewing, obviously something we touched on 2 weeks ago. They're interviewing Terry Venables behind his back, and that's been documented, hence the fact that he publicly resigned in April 1986, and we've got Steve Burtonshaw and John Cartwright to take over. So that is well documented. And then further down the line, if you go and read the autobiographies of Alex Ferguson, we were actually interviewing Sir Alex as well in 86. So we were looking for other managers, regarding Don Howe. And, Don Howe didn't take too kindly to that. Hence the fact that, but then again, John Howe. I don't blame him. But, the thing with Don Howe, he still went and coached Wimbledon in '88 to, when they won the FA Cup, and then he had a good few years at Queen's Park Rangers before Jerry Francis came along. You know what I mean? From about 88 up until 91, he did a very good job at Queen's Park Rangers. Don Howe with players like Andy Sitton brought Ray Wilkins over to the club, and he had players like Les Ferdinand, young Les Ferdinand, Simon Barker, David Seaman was there when Don Howe was there, Roy Wegley. So he had some, Roy Wegley. So he had, he did a lot of, brought a lot of players through at Queen's Park Rangers because Don Howe was a top coach.
He was a top coach, mate. He was one of the best in the game as a coach. Not so sure as him as a manager, but as a coach.
Well, yeah, before he came to Arsenal, remember he got a job at West Brom in the 70s, isn't it? It's 1972. After he was our coach when we won a double, so it was definitely one of those guys who probably hasn't made the transition. People I liken the way we are now to the Don Howe years under Mikel. A lot of people say Mikel's an absolutely fantastic coach, but as a team manager, I think me and you are of the opinion that he's not the right fit.
No, he isn't. I don't, and I'm not convinced about him as a coach either, Kenny, to be honest. But that's another story.
Of course, it is.
When George did go, and there was who was it? He came in as a stopgap. It was
this guy's came as stopgap with his assistant Stuart Houston.
Yeah,
Stuart Houston, who again, if the Arsenal Queen's Park Rangers sort of scenario, Stuart Houston was assistant to George Graham. He got the job, and then even before, it was quite interesting because Stuart Houston was Bruce Rioch's number 2 as well, and then after Bruce Rioch we got rid of Bruce Rioch just before Arsene Wenger got the job. Stuart Houston deputised as well because there was situations where there was a big fallout of Ian Wright when he was actually leaving him out because of things he was saying in the papers about slagging off his fellow players who didn't take too kindly to him leaking stories about his dissatisfaction with Bruce Rioch. And Ian Wright was coming about, these players are all sitting on the fence. They want to be managers in later years. That's why they're not coming out and saying it. That's why they're all turning against me and they're not talking to me. So he was effing and blinding in a way only Ian Wright can do. And then he after he scored one of his goals, I love the lads. You remember that, don't you? So it's one of those things where and ironically, when Stuart Houston left, Stuart Houston went on to get the QPR job, and Bruce Rioch was his assistant, which is weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was quite bizarre, really. But when they started looking, for the new manager, and there was all the speculation about who was going to come in, because there was all sorts of names. I remember it at the time. There was all these names being mentioned and whatnot. Who did you
Cruyff mentioned? Was Johan Cruyff mentioned?
Yeah, he was. I'm sure he was mentioned.
I'm sure Cruyff was mentioned. And there was a time before Arsene got the job that there was, rumours, loud, not so secret rumours as well, that we were looking at Tim Sherwood to bolster our midfield because there's rumours that Tim Sherwood was looking at houses because obviously he's a Watford boy. He is an Arsenal fan, despite the rubbish that he tries to spout on TV. He was an Arsenal fan. Going Match Weekly back in the day. What is my greatest moment? Alan Sunderland scoring that third goal in the 1979 FA Cup final. It was in print. Tim, don't lie. Timothy, don't lie to me, Timothy. It's in print. It's there. You said it. Alan Sunderland scoring the third goal in the 1979 FA Cup final. It was there. Stop lying. And so it was all those sort of things where had all sorts of links with certain managers and everything. We're even talking about Sir Bobby Robson as well.
Yeah,
who we were talking about getting a job. So David Dean kept it really, really secret. But I think what wasn't secret, wasn't a surprise, was when Bruce Rioch was fired. And he was. I don't think Bruce signed a contract anyway. I don't think it was one of the things where they were going to talk about at the end of the season. I think Arsenal just saw the loophole. But Bruce Rioch, despite the fact that people were talking about the fact that, the players didn't respect him, people like Paul Merson talking about certain things where he's comparing John McGinley to Ian Wright about, improving the runs he makes. And then obviously the situation with Ian Wright as well, where he was trying to be a sergeant major of Ian Wright. But one thing about Bruce Rioch, whether he's involved or not, we did get Dennis Bergkamp during his reign, and also we acquired David Platt, who was useful up to a point, but it's never an Arsenal player, in my opinion, David Platt.
No, it wasn't. I mean, I think I don't know what you think, Kenny. Sometimes I look at it and I think he had some sort of long-term plan about how he wanted to transform the club, but I don't know, really. I mean, it was a bit odd, to be honest.
It was an odd appointment, and it was I remember it. I don't think the season didn't even start, I think. I don't think the season started in 1996, 97. I don't, because I remember at the time, it was their first game of the season against West Ham, wasn't it? It was the first game of the season against West Ham, and it was in 96, 97. We didn't have a manager as such, and I think we had a caretaker manager, which was Stuart Houston, where West Ham, the Parlo fruit tray game where he wanted a number 10 shirt, and he had to negotiate with John Moncur to get the shirt. He was sulking. He wouldn't start the game because he thought it was in his contract to get a particular shirt West Ham. But I remember as such, I think we won the game 2-0. But it was one of those things where we didn't have a manager during that time, so it was all this speculation about who we were going to get. And then, I think further in late August, September, I was hearing rumours about a certain guy from Alsace-Lorraine who was managing in Grand Passat, and people were saying Arsene who. But the thing that I find resentful about that is that I kind of was scolding my friends around me because I was thinking, hang on here, haven't you heard of this guy? So no, he manages like Grand Passat in Japan. I went, hang on here, this guy won the La Ligue in France in 1988 with Mark Haitley, Amoros, and he had players like my guy Glenn Hoddle. So I knew who he was.
He had Haitley.
Yeah,
he had
those sort of players.
John Collins was there under him as well.
I think so. Yeah. And I do remember. And they were doing okay. They were. And I know Jurgen Klinsmann played under him as well, and they had a bit of a falling out. So when I think again, it was one of those things where obviously we won't get as much European football as we're getting previously, but I do think that there was probably an English kind of ignorance towards what Arsene was doing. Arsene, before he came to the football club, achieved a lot. In France. Obviously, he got sacked, which happens to all managers for Monaco, and he wanted to reinvent himself in Japan. But he had a high pedigree. So I was very, very intrigued about what he'd do at the club because it was our first foreign manager, wasn't it? Our first foreign manager. So
that's right. And he had a really good reputation. But I remember thinking, what's this going to be like? Because I heard some people saying, he plays really good football. Other people were saying, no, it's really negative. And I was thinking, do you know what I mean? Because I was really hoping that the new manager was going to bring in an attacking, aggressive football.
See, that's the thing is that at the time we were very much aware that one that we liked creativity in our midfield. Under George, and I thought that Bruce was trying to get us to play some sort of football. Obviously, bringing in players like Dennis, and obviously David Platt with experience. Who's just come from Italian football as well. We're playing for Juventus and Bari. We thought we'd had that sort of continental feel inside, and also we had at the time. I think we still had players like Glenn Helder in the team, who had that bit of pace. So one of the things we were always I was asking for was flair in midfield and a bit of ventness and pace down the wings. Because again, if I hark back onto our earlier discussion early on in this piece, I was becoming very frustrated with George's football. And,
I was.
I found the football in 92, 93, I found it, even though he won the Cups and it was brilliant, and it's great being a North London boy, beating Spurs in semi-final, beating Sheffield Wednesday 2 finals, and winning in Copenhagen, being around for those times as well. It for me was too frustrating for me, because I was thinking it just became hard watching us play, hard watching us even in the end at Highbury. It was hard watching those games.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't so bad in 92, 94, 93, 94, but 92, 93, the football was awful. And even in George's last season, the football, oh God, it was awful, wasn't it? It was crap.
Yeah, it was.
So
and I remember looking at that team and I was just thinking, no, the midfield in particular, it was awful. It was absolutely awful. Do you know what I mean? But Kenny, even having said all of that, I'd still have that midfield over what we got now.
100%. And that's the thing. One of the things I wanted from Arsene is that I wanted him to play the kind of football that I think Arsenal should be associated, and what they've been associated for a long time since he came to the club. But I had reservations about what he would do with our defence, because I assumed that that he was going to get like a speedster at both right back and left back, and I felt I generally feared for Dixon and Winterburn that they were going to get something more dynamic. But one of the best things Arsene did is that he just basically kept the defence. Although we give Arsene credit for a lot of what he's done, let's not forget that when he came to the club, we had the back four plus Steve Bolt. We had Ian Wright still in the prime of his career. He's only about 31, 32 when he came to the club. And we also had Dennis Bergkamp as well, David Platt's experience, and we had David Seaman in goal. So he had really good players to work with. But one thing he did, and you could never take away from him, first and foremost, he had the French market to himself. So he had and all the sort of players that we were going to get, and we're going to talk about in the future. And obviously, one thing he did is that although other clubs obviously were doing things like dietitians and everything, he was the first person, maybe not in football, but at Arsenal, who basically cleaned it up. We were a drinking club. Let's just cut it out. We as much as we're disciplined on the field, off the field, we're a mess. We're a mess. Yeah. We had the Paul Mercer situation. Tony Adams before Arsene, was appointed, admitted that he was an alcoholic. You had the Tuesday Club. You had situations where, just for a bit of energy, Gary Lineker used to give the players a bit of chocolate to keep them going and everything. So it was one of the things where Arsene completely changed the diets. And one of the things I always thank him for as well, I think he extended the careers of our back four.
Definitely, 100%.
And he got them playing football as well. It's like, he got Steve Bold putting those beautiful passes, and he had Tony Adams, because we always used to see Tony Adams kind of, like I said, stealing in the back on the far post for corners, but he was getting him to sort of, not so much bring the ball out, but actually surprising them, but getting past midfield and getting into attacking situations and encouraging, Vieira to, lend a hand when Tony Adams went up. And I thought that was very innovative from Arsene. So, it was what he did in terms of cleaning it up, the diets, the way he got them thinking, the ice baths, the training, that's when I thought, you know what? I think we're onto something here. I became just as excited when George got the job in '86, because George's first words, I want to reawaken a seeking diet. Arsene's first words for me that made me excited was how the players just started improving in there. People like Trevor Brook in a match of the day used to always say he's given the players unreal belief. And then one thing you've got to shake Arsene Wenger's hand is when you knew he was really serious was over Man United's voyage into the Champions League that time. And I remember they got to the semi-finals of the Champions League, and Sir Alex, a bit before his time, was asking the Premier League to, give Man United more time to prepare for their semi-final with Dortmund. And he was always going on TV, any channel will have him be Match of the Day or on Sky every time. Yabba, yabba. And Arsene Wenger used to always say, well, what about all the other teams? Why should Man United get preferential treatment? Not every team in this country does get preferential treatment. I thought, I ain't got it. I think he ain't got it. Doesn't Arsene know that you never question this man, that since he's won his first Premiership title in '93, everyone is scared of him. And I mean everyone.
Yeah, everyone that's right.
Was scared of him. Everyone at the BBC was scared of him. Referees were scared of him. Everyone at Man United was frightened of him. Everyone at the Premier League was frightened of him. Basically, Sir Alex Ferguson ran English football. Tevez always said, when him and Alex Ferguson had his spat, they said, would you apologise to Alex Ferguson? And Tevez said, why should I? He thinks he's the president of England. And at that time, no one, and I mean no one, questioned him. So for us, Wenger to question him,
it was, he had so much power, that man. It was just ridiculous. No one would question him.
No one questioned him. He basically could do and say what he liked without any kind of traction, adverse traction coming his way. But what I liked, it wasn't actually what Arsene did, it's how Sir Alex reacted. I remember to this day, it was Match of the Day. Match of the Day, they were obviously going to win the league anyway, but they lost to Derby County 3-2. I remember Paolo running one chop with that goal he scored. But remember Paolo one chop, but in England we call him one chop. Paolo one chop. That goal, and then to deflect from the fact that Man United lost 3-2, he just went straight into Arsene Wenger. The final words, he goes, "Yeah, Arsene Wenger seems to have a lot to say about it. I mean, he's been managing Japan, and he has no experience of English football, and yet he's telling the rest of us how to run the game. Unless he's been in a championship battle or got his team to the semi-finals of the Champions League, I suggest that he keeps his mouth firmly shut."
Exactly.
I thought, and I was thinking, I just thought result. I like this guy. Because I thought, I still didn't think we were going to challenge, but I knew that the football we were playing, the results we were getting, because second half of the season, we missed out on the Champions League on goal difference, because remember, Man United got 75 points, Newcastle got 68 points, Arsenal got 68 points, Liverpool got 68 points, but it was only on goal difference that Newcastle went to the Champions League that year. Yeah. So we didn't, even though he wasn't his first full season, we nearly got into the Champions League. We played some beautiful football. We improved. Ian Wright couldn't stop scoring. Paul Merson was playing well. Des Burkhardt was playing well. We didn't win anything that season. In fact, we didn't. We lost. I think we lost in the fourth round of the FA Cup and Leeds. But I thought third place, the football we were playing, which was brilliant. So you can imagine I was really excited about next season. Although at the time I was very pessimistic, because Man United was just a juggernaut. But one of the things that did give me some hope was when Eric Cantona retired. Because you remember that season, he retired, and I thought, you know what, are they going to be the same again? Who's going to challenge them? I didn't, subconsciously, I hoped it was us, but I always thought teams like Liverpool and Newcastle challenging them. But, because I didn't see who we were going to sign.
See, because, the thing is, what I liked about it, that spat that he had with Ferguson, when Ferguson told him he should be keeping his mouth shut because he hadn't done it. I loved it, because I thought, well, he's rattled him. And it was the first time since he'd come to England that I'd seen him getting rattled. Do you know what I mean? It happened in Scotland a few times when he was at Aberdeen, particularly with the old firm. that it would kick off regularly between the three clubs, but not since he's been in England. And Wenger really got to him, and that's why he went for him like that. I'm convinced of it. Do you know what I mean?
It was loads of times when I had spats where, they were talking about, Man United's inexperience and about how they're comparing the teams of football we played, and Arsene Wenger would come out with things like, well, everyone thinks they got the prettiest wife at home. And then when Alex Ferguson said that he apologised for Wenger for a remark, they asked Arsene, did you receive your apology from Alex Ferguson? Well, not yet. Who knows? Maybe it's come by horse. Those sort of things he used to come out with. Little stuff, but he wasn't just confrontational with Sir Alex. There was loads of people who had his spats with. I remember a spat with Vialli before, the semi-final in '98, which we lost to Chelsea. I was so furious we lost that anyway. Where Vialli got rattled by Wenger. He still won the game. He goes, I think they're just talking about, what Chelsea's tactics, and Vialli went, Arsene Wenger had the good opportunity to shut up, but instead he decided to talk bullshit. So he was he was rattling everyone, during his time, especially the early years when, he was at his greatest.
And he was, though. I mean, the first 10 years he was at this club, Kenny, it was just unbelievable, wasn't it? I mean,
we were unbelievable.
That 2002 season was just, it was unbelievable. I've never seen football like it. It was unreal.
Well, definitely.
And one game sticks out in my mind. I don't know if it was the 2002 season, but we went to Ellen Road and we slept. We were like 4-0 up in about 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, I think it could have been any season, because I know, like 2002, 2003, we actually murdered them, and the season afterwards, during the Invincible years, we murdered them. But it was one of the things where I think during those latter Wenger years, and I talk about the great years, not the ones where we had we became Barcelona, but those years before Barcelona, we were very, what I call, Sam Allardyce, and talks about the man for all season teams. And, God bless his soul, the late, great Gary Speed used to talk about when he compared the current Arsenal at the time, because obviously, before he died in 2011, he comparing that current Arsenal team that he was watching to the Arsenal teams he played against. And he said, well, when I played against Arsenal, they're all 6'3", can run 11 seconds. So that was the sort of thing that, that Arsenal were like in the latter great years of Wenger, where if teams wanted to put their foot in, yeah, we can have it. No problem. Thatcher will have it with you, Petit will have it here, and Gilberto said we'll have it here, or Toure, or Lauren will have it with you if you want. Let's have it then. If you want to play good football, yeah, we'll play football with you. If you want to sort of like play long ball, no problem. We got defenders with a bit of pace. We've got forwards like Henry who can play the ball foot. How you want it? We're better than you in it. If you want to, because at the end of the day, we've got the strength, we've got the athleticism, we've got the flair. And I think, the season you're talking about, 2001, 2002, which I regard as our best ever team, not the Invincibles. My best ever Arsenal teams that I've witnessed is the 2001, 2002 double winning side, then the 91 team, George, and then the Invincibles. But other people would talk about the 98 double winning sides as well. But either way, despite the fact that I was Wenger out and I still question his legacy, I'm not a pork chop. I'm always going to say that his team, the best ever team I've ever seen, was managed by him. It's not, for me, it's not rocket science, but for other Arsenal fans, there are Arsenal fans who would disagree with me and say, well, the 91 side is better because had they not lost against Chelsea, they would have been the Invincibles. And that was a superb team as well.
It was. It was an incredible team. And I don't think they get the credit they deserve, Kenny.
No,
I really don't.
They don't get credit. So, in terms of football I was watching and the football I like to play, where we defended very well as had everything in place in midfield and attack. I put that slightly ahead of the 91 side, who I believed played excellent and great football as well.
Yeah, I do.
And they were robust as well, and they had a bit of flair with players like Anders Limper. I wasn't going to include Rocky, because by that time Rocky was coming to the end of his Arsenal career anyway, especially after he didn't get to World Cup in 1990. The injuries started to, sap him. So in terms of like inventors of flair, we were relying more on Paul Merson and Anders Limper rather than Rocky.
That's right. Kenny, so, we had some great teams under Wenger, right? But what always used to frustrate me was that we never really looked like we were going to win the Champions League.
I was waiting for you to say that. I was actually waiting for you to say that. Yeah, because do you remember the time? You remember when we got to the Champions League proper? It was one of those things where, in 97, 98, one of the things, the big features of that team was our pace. Pace of players like Anelka, the pace of Overmars, and the fact that Highbury wasn't a massive pitch, and that when we got to the Champions League, UEFA are going to want all their advertisements. So Arsenal's a 38,000 seater stadium. Obviously we could, because of the, getting all the adverts and boards around. I think the capacity for European games is about 37,400 or just 37,000. So that was when the first talk I was hearing was about moving to a bigger ground. Obviously, there was talk by David Dean, if let's save some money, just go and rent Wembley, do what West Ham were doing there. So he was pushing us towards Wembley. Also, there was local residents who, Jez, who's watching, will know this as well. Obviously, I'm Islington as well, where local residents objected strongly to the fact that, we wanted to extend Highbury, but they refused to move. There was one actress who was on a comedy show who used to go on Thames News went on Thames News, objecting to our proposals. But
Go on, sorry, Kenny, go on.
Yeah, so it was all that sort of thing where, one of the things I didn't like. Remember that time when we had to go to Wembley and watch those games? I remember getting nice little tickets. And we who was in the first group? The first group I remember in 98, 99 was Panathinaikos.
I remember was in a group with Barcelona.
That was the season after. That was the 99-2000 season. But the season before that, when we were at Wembley, is when we had Panathinaikos, Kiev, and Lyon. So we beat Panathinaikos 2-1. Drew with Kiev. I think
they spanked us, didn't they?
I think Rebrov
absolutely backed us, didn't they?
Yeah. Do you remember when they had players like Shevchenko and Rebrov in those Kiev teams? And then obviously we had Lodz, who beat us 1-0, and then we didn't even end up going into the Europa League. We just ended up nowhere. Yeah. And it was one of those things where I thought it was a bit of a blip, but it became, as you say, very frustrating, where I always thought that we got this great team. We got this, at the time I thought, a great manager. Yeah, teams working us out in Europe. We weren't transferring that football to Europe. Why?
Because it was weird, because back home in England, we would go and, we'd be spanking teams week in, week out. And then when it come to Europe, we would struggle. We wouldn't be able to have the same level of dominance against them as what we were doing at home, and it was just a bit weird.
Do you think that's do you think a lot of that, in hindsight, and what I felt I knew towards the end of Arsene Wenger's career at the club, it wasn't evident then, but it was very evident probably 10 years after that, where I felt that I began to realise that Arsene Wenger wasn't the tactician that I thought he should have been. I thought Arsene Wenger was more of a motivator, and that he used to always come out with phrases. You can always tell someone's personality for the way they perform on a football pitch. And for me, that reminded me of some, we were hearing about Liverpool, how Liverpool never used to train players. They had to work out themselves. And I felt, was that the same thing that was happening with Arsenal? Because, there's no doubt in Europe that tactical managers were outwitting Arsene Wenger, even when we had our great sides. I mean,
that's right.
If you think about it, during those times when we had those great sides, the only time where I felt that we could have won the European Cup or the Champions League was in 2004, when I still don't know how a team we used to dominate, even when Abramovich spent those millions, just found a way to beat us in Europe. And I think that's when the tide turned in terms of the domination, or in London, where from Wayne Bridge scoring that goal in the 84th minute, Chelsea became the top club in London, not us.
Yeah, because it all changed on that goal.
Yeah.
It did. Because before then, every time we played them, we'd win. It was, a question. But we went 2-0 up in that game. Reyes scored.
Yes,
right.
We
went 1-0 up in that game, but we was 2-1 on aggregate because we'd drawn the first game at Stamford Bridge 1-0.
That's right, yes.
And then we got back at Highbury. We went 1-0 up, and I thought, right, okay, that's it. They're not coming back from this.
Well, we all thought that. Chelsea fans were quiet.
If we had knocked them out, we would have won it. Because all we had in front of us after that was Monaco.
Real Madrid.
Monaco as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was basically the teams that we could have played was Porto, Real Madrid. If we got to semi-finals, we probably would have played either Porto, Real Madrid, and Monaco. So, at the time, with the momentum we had, you would have thought that we would have gone on to win it. Obviously, the team that were favourites during that time was actually in Real Madrid, but Porto beat him in the semi-final. Ludovic Julie scoring one of the goals in the semi-final. But at the time, I was completely overconfident about beating Chelsea. In fact, I bypassed them. I was just talking about who we're going to be getting in the semi-final. Let's hope we don't get Real Madrid. You know what I mean? I think we were all doing that.
Yeah, I was the same, mate. I was. But, see, do you think it was because of the fact that Wenger wasn't a tactician and that in Europe you needed to be a tactician? What do you think it was down to? Why was it that he never won the European Cup / Champions League?
I put it purely down to the fact tactics. It's purely down to tactics, especially the group stage is not particularly that tactical. But when it comes to the knockout stages and you're playing like strong teams, they're going to watch Arsenal and they're going to look at the players we've had, players that, if you want to go, Anelka, Henri, Perez, Bergkamp, Vieira and everything, they're going to put players up. They're going to look at our strengths and say, right, these are the players who make Arsenal tick. We're not going to just go and put, play open football against them because they're going to murder us. What we're going to do is we're going to man mark these players and make it difficult and see how they are in the counter, how they cope when we hit them when they break. And I think that's how a lot of teams played against us in Europe. Hence the fact that they got results against us. It was that they didn't outplay us, they out-tactics us.
So, but how much of it, though, do you think was down to the fact that we couldn't get Dennis on an aeroplane?
I think even if we could get Dennis on an aeroplane, I don't think it would have made much of a difference because, definitely against teams, obviously you want someone like Dennis who can break teams down and everything, but I just thought teams tactically were better than us, much better than us. And I thought that...
I mean, I tend to agree with you because we had, at that time as well, we had Carnu, didn't we? And he would come in playing, and he was more than competent, by the way. And it just, I don't know, man. It just baffled me, really.
I agree with you, but you know the
Right.
situation. If you like kind of look at the English teams who were getting into Europe during that time, even before the Abramovich years, I thought Chelsea made a better fist of it tactically
Yeah,
than we did when they were in Europe.
yeah,
And
they did.
and obviously Sir Alex Ferguson, obviously that was just as much as Arsene Wenger was obsessed with the Champions League, so was Sir Alex as well. And you know, see with the players he had, he learnt about the European game. He changed his coach. He had coaches who learnt about the European game. Did a lot of scouting. So there were times when they played very much possession based football as well. When they were playing in Europe, and I always felt that they looked more comfortable at that level than we did.
So, Kenny, we had obviously had all that success with Arsenal in that first 10 years. And then for me, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I started having doubts about Arsenal before we got to the Champions League final. Do you know that?
And definitely, I think, and rightly so, because what we were seeing, I think, whether we like it or not, bringing Cesc Fabregas into the side was the best and worst thing that ever happened to us. Because he's a unique talent. He's probably one of the best midfielders we've ever had. Although he never won anything of great note for us. All his success was at Barcelona and Chelsea, but we blatantly built a team around Cesc Fabregas. We blatantly changed the way we played because we had Cesc Fabregas on the side. That cannot be denied. And what's happened? We became Barcelona because of Cesc Fabregas. Again, something that I'm not going to disagree with. And we nearly pulled it off in 2007, 2008. But what was happening? Whilst we were trying to evolve and trying to be a stronger unit when we, in the early days of Barcelona, I think the reason why you had your doubts is because that season, the last season at Highbury, we were awful in the league. We nearly didn't get in the Champions League. In fact, had it not been for Spurs' Lasagna gate, we'd have had to beat Barcelona in that final in Paris. One I think me, you, and Jez attended. We had to beat Barcelona in that final in order to get in the Champions League because we would have played the UEFA Cup. And so
Exactly.
It's one of those things where that I understand that because if you remember rightly, Vieira was messing around. He got an offer of Juventus, and David Dean probably got the ump and got fed up with him and said, "Well, I'm neutral now. I.e., if you want to go, you go. We're not begging you no more." And then complete change. I remember who did we lose against? We lost away to Everton, lost away to Bolton, lost away to Newcastle, lost away to Wolverhampton Wanderers, Blackburn. Liverpool, Man United who beat us anyway. But our away record, how many times did we lose? We lost at home. We lost at home at Chelsea and West Ham.
Don't. But
yeah, we must have lost about 13 games that season. We must have lost 13 games that season.
Because for me, it's no surprise. For me, it wasn't any surprise that Arsene, when he started changing the makeup of the team from one where most of the players were over 6 foot, but technically excellent, he then moved to a situation where most of them were under 6 foot and quite some distance as well. And what I put it down to was that night when we played Barcelona at the Emirates, and they came and they absolutely. I know it was it was a 2-2 draw, but they absolutely ripped us to shreds, particularly in the first half. And they.
I think we brought back 2-2. Did Phil Walcott get one of the goals?
Yeah, I think he did. But there was one point in that game in the first half where they had us pinned in our own penalty area for
that's right,
15, 20 minutes and we couldn't get out. And I think it traumatised Wenger. And he looked at it, this is the future. This is what I need to do. I need to transform Arsenal into that. and I think it just never worked.
Well, the reason why it didn't work, everyone just assumes that Barcelona one of the things if you're going to play that way, you got to have to work hard for the ball and win it back. You look at Barcelona under Pep. Whenever they won, if you look at the reason why teams play the ball long against Barcelona rather than try to play short passes, because whenever Barcelona lost the ball, you had players, all of them, but particularly the players that you always saw was Xavi and Iniesta in people's faces, where they're cutting off the pass. So, for instance, what will happen is that Barcelona will make a triangle around you, where you can't go sideways Ray Wilkins because they're going to have someone there to intercept. You can't go the other side, and then you go forward, they're in your face. So you had to play it long, and you needed a target man against them. Whilst with Arsenal, we played the bars attacking wise, we played the ball, but off the ball we were terrible, and that's why Barcelona was always flawed, because we didn't have the work rate off the ball. And we weren't interested in winning it back. But if you look at the situation in the Emirates, when we played teams at the Emirates, we smashed teams a bit because we dominated possession, but it was always going forward. So we, with the exception of our rivals, who used to toy with us and let us do the attacking and hit us on a break because they had players just as good as ours. We were formidable at the Emirates.
See, the thing is as well, Kenny, but people always go on about that Barcelona team and how good they were in possession. And I just say to them, look, because that's what I remember about that game, is defensively, they were just out. It's one of the best defensive setups I've ever seen, because they just, like you said, as soon as you had possession of the ball, you were swamped.
Swamped.
You couldn't move. It was just like you were strangled. Like,
but one team that could play. One team who could play, who could give Barcelona a hard time. And then, the sort of tactics I was talking about, where basically you kind of know that you can't, like I said, pass through Barcelona. You can either get them on the wings or just play a longer pass and get someone who can hold the ball up, and then you have players running. Chelsea it wasn't just under Mourinho, but it was Chelsea in general. They were the team that Barcelona's bogey sides, where they had the formula and the kryptonite to beat Barcelona because of the fact that they had wingers and they had Drogba who could hold the ball up. So they accepted that that they can't pass through Barcelona. So they said, why don't we play the diagonal ball, or why don't we see if we can play the ball longer, and then we can have runners off Drogba like Lampard. And it's one of those things where they were the only few teams could do it. I know Internazionale did it to them under Mourinho in 2010, but apart from that, when Barcelona played most of their teams, it was demoralising, definitely demoralising. As Gooners watching that.
They were so good off the ball, and people don't talk about it, but I just watching that game, Kenny, I was shocked how good they were.
Exactly.
On the ball and without it. And that's what I really liked, the way they played off the ball. Because as soon as they lost the ball, like you said, it was just like they swamped you.
It was awful. It was demoralising. I remember, although I hate Man United, I actually felt sorry for Man United when they played him in those two Champions League finals in 2009 and 2011, because it was just so, the way when Man United actually got the ball, which was red, the way they got swamped, and then when Barcelona just played those quick passes, they were just in Man United's back four, and I thought, even though the scoreline was 2-0 in the final, one was 3-1, it could have been more. Perhaps, you know what I mean? That was just demoralising to play against.
Yeah, because who is it? They describe it like a roundabout. They said, as soon as they get you on that roundabout, that's it. They've got you.
And you remember how they used to play against Real Madrid in those sort of those one-off games as well, in the league or in cups, and in Europe as well. They used to do the same thing in Real Madrid. Real Madrid had the Galacticos, but You know what I mean?
remember, like Barcelona put 6 past them.
That's right. Yeah, it was. That's right. Was it 5-0 when they had players like David Villa, and it was one of the things where it was probably one of the most ruthless brand of football I've ever seen, and it was probably the best football you've seen. You know, I think people in this country are very lucky that Sky actually had the live rights for that game, and everyone was talking about it. I think everyone in this country watched the game, regardless of whether they supported Barcelona or not. It was the most talked about game, non-English game in this ever, because the way they beat their rivals so easily.
Yeah, they destroyed them. You know, it was like every time they attacked, they looked like they were going to score. You know, it was just ridiculous. And I remember the Real Madrid goalkeeper,
Casillas,
that he was stood there and he was like, he looked traumatized by the end of it all.
I think that was the situation, because if you look at the Arsenal, there were at the Emirates. Obviously, we say that, you know, we smashed down Highbury and we were promised a lot of things. One of the things that you know frustrated me is that we should have won the league in 2007, 2008. We played unbelievable football, but I think two things that I think Arsene Wenger made a mistake. Even though Lehmann had a couple of dodgy moments against Fulham and Blackburn, I think if we had Lehmann in goal on the pitch as leader, I think he would have seen us through. And Munya is not a number one. He didn't do badly that season, but Lehmann, what you needed was a presence. You know, someone who, as well as the William Gallas, was a leader. I do believe that if Lehmann was in goal, in terms of his presence in the team, especially on match day, I think we would have just got over the line, because I think towards the end we got a bit tired, obviously, because we were playing always on the front foot. Teams were beginning to work us out, and I think our inexperience and the pressure got to us, our young team, and we definitely need leadership.
Yeah, because it's a bit similar to nowadays, isn't it? The current side, we've got no real leadership in that team either. But because my memory gets a bit funny with this. That was the year when we had Eduardo got done at Birmingham.
That's right. The Birmingham game was definitely a turning point. Eduardo breaking his leg. You know, William Gallas, you know, cliche, basically having a Willie Young moment. And then Gallas sulking. And even though we were 8 points ahead of Man United, you know, Man United players, you know, it's in print quoted, said, well, that was probably the time when we knew we could get them. And that transpired to the extent that that's exactly what happened. And I felt after that,
Gallas was sat on the pitch.
That's right, yeah, Gallas was sat on the pitch. And then like there was a game, I think a week later, we had Aston Villa at home. We dropped points at Villa at home, dropped points to Middlesbrough, you know, and we were just floundering. You know, we lost against Chelsea, a game we should have won at their place. And then Man United turned us over, and it was like capitulation city. But, you know, we got to the quarterfinals of the Champions League that season, where I thought we played probably our best football at Anfield. And I hate Arsenal fans who blame referees, but to that day, the only time I ever got angry with a referee when Arsenal were playing is two referees. Turja Hauger, I'm sorry, I don't want to sort of discredit your show, but he's an effing bastard. Turja Hauger in Paris, the referee that sent off Lehmann, he's an effing bastard. He's a cheat of all cheats. I hate him. If I saw Turja Hauger right now, I'll strangle him. And because I really hate that man. I really hate that man. I felt that we got robbed in that against Barcelona, and that you know when he could have let Ludovic Judy's goal stand, and we would have played 11-11. Not saying we would have won, but it would have made it a game where our legs didn't run out on us when Barcelona got the equaliser and Henry missed that chance. And the other referee I hate, to this day, I still feel aggrieved with our quarter-final defeat at Anfield. The refereeing that day, especially
What
towards
the
the end,
Champions League you're talking about?
Champions League, refereeing that day. Let me tell you something. If you could just harm someone with hate, and all the hate and injustice, I could have gone for him as well. Apart from that, I've never felt that cheating and aggrieved with refereeing those two games.
I've never ever heard you complain about a referee. Never.
I don't. But those two games, I did. I was furious with Toja Alja. I hate him to this day. And I actually hate the referee. I don't even want to look at him and remember his name. The referee who refereed us in the quarterfinals, second leg at Anfield. To this day, there was I don't know what he was thinking, but how can someone be that bad? I'm nicking a phrase from Declan Rice from 2 weeks ago in Frankfurt, where you went, "How can you be that bad? How can you be that bad? You must have been effing paid." I didn't use words like I didn't think he got paid, but he was. How can a referee in a Champions League final and a Champions League quarter final 2 years later be that bad? And then, but then again, Chelsea have had grievances as well because a Swedish referee cheated them out of the appearance in the Champions League final against Barcelona in 2009. That referee cheated. They had at least 2 or 3 blatant penalties, so it wasn't just us. But but those bloody West London tossers have won the Champions League twice. We haven't won it because I bloody told you Hauger and that bastard referee at Anfield.
That game against, I remember both those games. I remember the game against Liverpool at Anfield, and I remember I was furious after that one as well. Do you know what I mean? It was shocking. And I also remember that Chelsea game as well, and that was crazy because Barcelona as well. I think there's the game where they equalised in the last minute or something.
Yeah, Iniesta scored that brilliant goal. But I mean, how many penalties? How many times could Barcelona handle the ball in a box? And or Chelsea player not get a penalty?
Drogba was losing his nut. He went mental.
But the thing that made me laugh about the whole thing, I talked to Chelsea fans. Also, I've got loads of friends in Chelsea, and I said to them, if they were still playing the game now, like 13 years after the thing, they wouldn't have called the final whistle until Barcelona got that equaliser. That's how he looked. That's how he looked.
I know it was really bad because it did feel like that. They felt like there was like play. When we was at school. And you'd have like next goal wins. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was like that. It was next goal if Barcelona score wins.
But the irony of that game, the other semi-final was between Arsenal and Man United, and that's when I wanted Arsene Wenger sacked after we lost to Man United in the semi-final of the Champions League, and because a couple of weeks before that we lost to Chelsea in the semi-final of the FA Cup. And people said, well, why do you want him sacked when he got to 2 semi-finals? The reason I wanted him sacked because it became abundantly clear to me that we'll never win a league under his management, and we'll never win a Champions League under his management. And that with 2 reasons. One, the fact that he wasn't buying big players, the fact that we're selling players, and the fact that our football was way too open and easy to play against. But that with him at the helm, we'd be cunning fodder in Europe and in the league, and that's exactly what we became. We stopped being a team that could win the league. We became a top 4 club, and to the extent that we are the club which we are now, just happy with Europa League, and that's when I think, and that's why I feel resentment towards him. I feel resentment towards Arsene Wenger because of he didn't take his cards and resign when he was clear, even to him probably, that he would never be able to compete. He started making excuses for the fact that we couldn't compete because of the money, and he started saying the top 4 is a trophy. And what I found even more resentful is the fact that a lot of people, Arsenal fans now, think that Arsene Wenger was performing wonders to keep us in the top 4 when everyone in football knew during those times especially the ones who don't really write history, that there was a massive gap between the top four and every other club in the Premiership. In fact, the top four during that period, from when we first moved to the Emirates up until probably about 2010, were probably the best teams in Europe anyway.
Yeah, it was. Me, Kenny, it's like it is now. Only instead of just Liverpool and Man City, there were four of them.
Yeah, it was like Liverpool. It was like Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool. That was the top four.
Yeah.
It was like a old boys club where they paid the best salaries, had the best players, and paid the most transfer fees, us included. No one was. Yeah. It was a massive gap. So when people say that he can perform wonders, that's rubbish.
Yeah,
we're always going to be a top four because we had the bigger budget than everyone else.
Yeah. This season, I think I'm right in saying that Liverpool and City, they finished something like 19 points clear of Chelsea third. But
so there's a gap there. There's a gap there.
Like four of them doing it. Yeah, but and we're one of them.
You remember 3 years ago, it was the same thing. Remember, it was 98 points to City in 2019, 97 to Liverpool. And then the team that came third was Chelsea. They were third with 72 points. So they finished 25 points behind Liverpool in 2019. So obviously, Liverpool Man City still got into the 90s this season. And the gap was probably they reduced the deficit by 6 points, but it's a massive gap.
Yeah, it's a massive gap.
And then it was the same with the top four and everyone else in terms of, and it wasn't just in points, but it was just in other sort of areas where, in terms of player acquisition, the money they were getting, because they're always in the Champions League, so what they were getting through advertising and TV money dwarfed all the other clubs. The only team that probably had an outside chance of catching the top four, because they were a very well-run club because of a certain person's tightness, was Tottenham. At that time when we had the top four, and then they weren't getting the Champions League before Harry Redknapp came to the club. They were the richest club in the world or in Europe who were outside the Champions League.
Yeah, and it was. I remember one of those years. I think we finished something like 30 odd points ahead of Tottenham.
I think that was the time when they weren't challenged. But even
10 years, I'm sure that one season we finished 30 odd points ahead of them.
Yeah, but that was during the sort of great Arsenal years. But the gap, I think at the time when we were at the Emirates, they're quietly reducing that gap. I think if you look at the Arsene Wenger years, one of the biggest frustrations for a lot of Arsenal fans, for me as well, is the fact that we've allowed Spurs to go ahead of us, and they quietly did it. I mean, from the time when they finally beat us in the league in 2010 with goals by Rose and Bale, and then obviously Van Persie got. I think it was Bentner got the goal back. Since then, they've chipped away, and then they've gone right past us. And if you look at the situation even recently, with them getting Champions League football, they got a class, elite manager. That's the only way it's going to be moving further. But that all started when we became complacent and we treat the top four like a trophy. And that is Arsene Wenger's legacy. His legacy was the fact that we went in decline, and that we hadn't won the league for before he left and before we got sacked at 14 years, we only got one Champions League final, one semi-final. But the thing that is just as unforgivable is the fact that we've allowed Spurs to go past us.
No, and that
never gets talked about. It never gets talked about. It never gets acknowledged. But what it does, it gets buried under a sea of delusion and what I call straw clutching. Oh yeah, of course we're still bigger than Spurs. They're not as good as us. They haven't won a trophy. in 14 years. We won the FA Cup. We had a cup trophy. So even though Spurs have finished above us in the league for the last 6 seasons, we're still better than Spurs because they haven't won anything. I mean, how juvenile was that argument? How juvenile? It's juvenile. It's embarrassing.
It is, and
If you want to play along, but the evidence is there. Even when Spurs were in transition and declined, they were still better than us. It's a fact.
Exactly, and they've now finished ahead of us. God knows how many years. So
6 years.
What does that tell you?
Yeah, and look at the fact that the caliber of player, of manager, are attracting that we can't attract. Come on,
Kenny, and next year, I'm sorry,
you look at their stadium.
But I think they're going to challenge next year.
Yeah, of course so. Because and look at their stadium. I was there last couple of weeks ago for the North London Derby. I already knew their stadium was a great stadium because I was there for the Joshua fight. It's better than our stadium, obviously because it's newer. But they're off the pitch, they're better than us, and we've allowed that to happen because of complacency.
They've got Antonio Conte. He's one of the best managers in the world, in my opinion. And they
got Patrici as well, who's one of the best transfer negotiators of this as well. So plus remember they just got they got an injection of money from a stadium project. So he's starting war chest is 150, known for they'll top that up as well. And so any targets that Arsenal go for, and Spurs go for, they're going to go to Spurs for Champions League football because they're foreign players want to live in London. Well, Spurs is a London club. We're 62,000 stadium playing in the Champions League, and they got players like Song and Kane. No brainer. We've allowed this to happen.
I know, and it's so annoying and so frustrating that we have allowed it to happen, but. And I can't see how it's going to come to an end. That's the annoying thing. That's why I get so upset with it. It's because, I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can't.
The thing about it is that you can attempt to, put some light in the dark tunnel by making some changes. You can make some changes in terms of like Mikel as coach. That's a major one. And also the Cronkies. Now they could leave and get someone else in, a megalomaniac in the Abramovich kind of Mansour style who will basically think, right, if I'm paying millions and billions of pounds, I want the best. And if the best isn't available, I'll make him available by offering him more money than what he's on. Which is what Chelsea did when they first became a top club under Abramovich, where they poached Peter Kenyon from Man United, poached Frank Arneson from Spurs. And the reason why they poached them is because they were best in the business. And the reason why they left that awful training ground, because I played football in that training ground, Hayes and Harlingen, and it's probably one of the worst pitches I played for. It's an eyesore, but that's what they used to train in. The dressing rooms were even worse, an eyesore as well. But what's happened? He said, if I'm paying millions of pounds, I've got to make sure that I invest in the best training ground. Who did he copy? Oh, yeah, he copied Cobham.
Exactly. And for me, it's a massive concern because, I think the key to it all is Stanley Kroenke, but get him out.
The trouble with Stan Kroenke is that Stan Kroenke's been handed an ace. He's handed them a gift from because Arsenal fans are the gift that keep on giving. They are. If they're saying trust the process and they're giving Arteta the high approval rating, that means they approve what the board are doing. Because the board
exactly. That's the thing. Because that's what I don't understand is these people saying, they want Mikel Arteta, yet they're also calling for Stan Kroenke to leave. And I'm just thinking, well, if you want him to go, it means surely you want Arteta gone as well. It just don't make any sense to me.
Well, no, Arsenal fans, especially the current Arsenal fans, not sorry, Arsenal fans, but you've got to realise this, that the Arsenal fans have been led by the hand by deceitful people, in my opinion. Deceitful ex-players, deceitful people in the media, and deceitful fans in new media who have aspirations, who know if they sit on the fence and appear to back what the project, that they'll get paid written work, and like I said, exposure boosting appearances on the radio or Sky or BT. Gone are the days where they want people who are like us, who are going to say, well, this is all wrong, we're not going to win. I mean, Lads Bible, the reason why they get people on that channel know full well that if you compare Arsenal and Liverpool, full well Liverpool are 10 times bigger and more relevant. But Lads Bible don't want that. They want an Arsenal fan who's going to say, well, Arsenal's bigger, and they're going to put an argument for it. But they're going to, because where's the entertainment in them saying, well, yeah, they are bigger than us. There's no entertainment in it. There's no way you're going to, please, your paymasters, which is the rest of football, your clubs, if you get fans on like us who are critical. Arsenal, yeah.
It's like, this is why I don't like AFTV anymore. It's like, it's all about trying to be controversial for the sake of getting views, and
that's what they were like before.
It's like doing it so they can get listeners, and that's why I think Radio 5, like Chris Sutton, because although I rate him, he's on there because he is controversial.
Well, yeah, but I think what's happened with Arsenal Fan TV
is they upset people.
Yeah, but Arsenal Fan TV, everyone on that channel is a businessman, and it's not just the people behind the scenes and the owner of the channel. It's the people who actually go on there. They're businessmen. They know full well that they're now sitting on the fence. They're publicly backing his project, and the people that they've made prominent are not the sort of people that they were making prominent before. So they are trusting the process. The owner of the channel trusts the process, but it's all done in a sort of business-like way. Some of the people who go on the channel, or even people who go on podcasts, want paid written work. They want to go on Sky Sports. They want to get in like Lads Bible, and they want to get on what they deem to be respectable podcasts. So they are going to talk the club up. They are going to, create an argument which is not there, i.e. Arsenal being bigger than Liverpool. But what's happening? It's all about making your coin whilst you can, because Arsenal Fan TV is losing viewers. It's not a successful channel no more. Videos that get sent to me, I know full well, a few years back in the line, they would have got about 6 figures views. Some of them struggle to get 25,000 views because people are not interested in Arsenal Fan TV. The reason why people are not interested in Arsenal Fan TV is because Arsenal fans, most importantly, have made it abundantly clear to anyone who listens, especially the media, that they don't consider Arsenal Fan TV as spokesmen for their football club. They don't want them as spokesmen for their football club. They don't want them around. They don't even want to see them at matches. They actively tell people do not sell tickets if it's going to go to anyone regarding Arsenal Fan TV. You know what I mean? And that's it. So you can't get any more sort of blunt and more strident than that. They've said it. They're not saying, they might not like Arsenal. They say they don't want them there, and their views are dying anyway, because characters who question the manager or the owner or question direction of the club are not on there no more. So these people are blatantly fame chasers, blatantly people who've got YouTube channels and just want their exposure. And all the people that goes on his sister's show as well are people with YouTube channels. You know what I mean? The only person who doesn't have a YouTube channel is a guy that I've known from, going to this place, and there's his tie. All the rest of them got YouTube channels.
Well, they have, and you're right, Kenny. I've noticed that. But going back to the club, right, Arsenal, time came to an end, and
right. So, for me, it was 9 years too early. It was 9 years too late.
Exactly, mate. And then Unai was appointed, but before Unai got appointed, did you ever a candidate who you wanted to come in, or?
Well, I think all the candidates got exhausted because one of the biggest myths when Arsene Wenger was at the latter stage of his reign at the football club is that no one was available. There was tons of managers available. The fact that Klopp was acquired by Liverpool showed he was available. We've seen managers like Ancelotti and, if you dare to say, Mourinho, getting new appointments during Arsene's reign. They're always available. Well, they're always available and they're always on hand. And they actually had something to work with. But they had something to work with. If Arsene Wenger went, and he should have done, he still would have had good players to work with. And who knows, we would have turned their fortunes around and challenged for the league and challenged in Europe. But by the time Arsenal left, there was nothing to work with. There was nothing really to work with. Even you're right, Craig, even towards the end, from 2015 to 2018, we were always talking about Allegri. And, maybe we had a little bit of work with in 2016, 2017. But by the time he left, there was nothing to work with. At most, Ozil was going on like a pork chop. Sanchez has gone. A lot of their top players weren't here no more.
What about all these rumours that were flying around saying that, this was when Pep was at Bayern, that he wanted to come to England, and it was us that he wanted to come to.
Well, look, there's a lot of let's if we want to play along. I ain't got proof, but I got a hunch that Pep was interested. I got a hunch that a lot of people. I got a hunch that there's a lot of people were waiting around to see if Arsene Wenger would resign because they did cover that Arsenal job. Yeah. And I know a lot of people were asking around, when is he going to go? Because I wouldn't mind taking a job. And now that is a hunch. And some people say that's factual. The fact is, Arsene Wenger held back the progress of this football club by being there because he was obsessed with trying to right the wrong of Paris 2006. Yeah. It's a fact. He wanted to win the European Cup and he was obsessed with it because the only trophy he hadn't won. I don't think he cared too much about the League Cup because, let's face it, it was Chelsea in 2007. He gave the cup to one playing the kids, and Birmingham only bloody hell, had two pork chops, Koscielny and Chesney had a lot to do with that. And then Man City was one of the biggest no-shows I've ever. It was just we just let him beat us, humiliate us.
Exactly, and see, the thing that worries me now is that they say, like, tomorrow morning it comes out that Mikel Arteta has done some massive financial irregularities and they're left with absolutely no choice but to sack him. I just don't think they would employ a top-class manager, Ken.
Yeah, but if you think about it, with the exception of, maybe I could say Arsene Wenger from Monaco, I heard of, when have Arsenal gone big? I mean, the biggest name manager, if look back history, was like the England captain, the person who was Bobby Moore before Bobby Moore was Billy Wright in '62. And that didn't go well between 62 and 66.
No,
you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
But at the time, obviously I wasn't alive by that time, but if you go into the zeitgeist, Billy Wright was a massive, massive name in British football because of the fact that he got 105 caps, one club man at Wolverhampton Wanderers, and he was England captain.
So, well, anyway, so we got Unai, and how did you feel about Unai's appointment, Kenny?
I was happy because simple reasons. Because Unai Emery had experience. He was a top manager, and he was at PSG. He resigned before he was going to get the push. But I thought, I still say to this day, the guy was never given the time. And I think us collectively as fans, we were pushed into and hoodwinked into getting rid of him. To the extent that we joined along with the criticism of him, but the criticism of Unai was from people who had no patience, didn't like the tactics, didn't feel there was any tactics, and these were just Arsene Wenger fans who conveniently had a man who they can blame for everything that went wrong, rather than make Arsene Wenger culpable. But the whole situation with Unai Emery, his cards were marked even before Baku. It was the fact that, just like this season, Unai Emery, in my opinion, had the top four in his hands. But he just ran out, away games to Wolves and Leicester were disastrous. But I think that maybe the losing at home to Palace, the Wilfried Zaha and the Mustafi game, I think that's where the kind of will. But even then, the fact is that he would always be superior to Arteta, because at least he took the Europa League seriously. At least he got to the final. I will never know what happened in that final, but I tell you one thing, right? My hunch is that players down tools in that final, and the player that I'm laying the blame at is Mesut Ozil. And Mesut Ozil, as much as he's probably the most gifted player, who's got unreal ability, probably one of the most gifted players on paper I've ever seen. But he was a poison pill towards the end of Arsene Wenger's reign, and he was definitely a poison pill during the Unai Emery years. And Arteta recognised that pretty much. I mean, I think a lot of people were talking absolute garbage that they got rid of him because of, I don't know what happened, but a lot of people have put it down to him not signing a new contract. I don't think it was that. I think it was just what he was doing off the field. He was a bad influence.
I think so. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, Unai smelt it. He was here like 3 games, and it's funny.
It's funny how all the bad eggs. I'm not playing for under this guy. It's funny that.
Yeah, and then like you said, Mikel worked it out as well. And that was it. He was gone, but I've got absolutely no doubt that final that those players.
Oh, absolutely down tools. There's no way a guy who's negotiated 2 years later negotiated a final against Man United, who had better players than the team we lost to against Chelsea, went and executed his plans. What about the times when he was at Seville? You trying to tell me this guy's a crap manager, that he was that bad that we'll capitulate, and he had nothing to do with the players? Who's kidding who? No. And the only player that was trying was the guy that came on off the bench to score our goal.
No, exactly. And I agree with you. I think it was definitely a case of hit them downing tools on him, because I always remember the look on his face at the final whistle.
He was in tears. The guy was in tears. I think the guy was in. The only players that were in tears, the only people associated with the football club who were in tears were Torreira and him. All the rest of them couldn't give a bob about what happened against Chelsea.
See, the thing is as well, Kenny, you have to ask yourself the question, why is it that he was able to get these players performing as well as they did when they were performing?
Because he's a top manager who they respect.
The front players, yet this one we got now can't. I just don't.
I'll tell you why, because we got to end this in about a minute. But sorry about it. But one thing I would say is 2 reasons. Everyone compares Mikel Arteta favourably to Arsene Wenger and favourably to Pep Guardiola, but he played his best football under David Moyes.
Yeah.
So we are seeing, in fact, David Moyes type football. The only thing he's got in common with Guardiola's is what I call a micromanager with the success. But with other players, Guardiola's just had just as many falling outs with players as Mick Arteta's beginning to in his short career as a manager. Mick Arteta is basically a micromanager without the success, but there's no accident that Mick Arteta's got a very, very young team, and so young players are going to obey their manager.
100%. They will, and that's why he's gone down this youth project. And it's also, I believe, to extend his stay at the club, because they can turn around and say, well, he needs more time. They're a young team, blah, 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 all that nonsense.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing, Warren. Yeah. It's youth project by design, not by design, and it's only a youth project in order to protect the reputation and the utility of our manager, because by him getting a contract, we are a Europa League club in effect because of this man, and that's just not acceptable for this great club that is Arsenal. A lot of people who want to see themselves as levy-headed, who I see who basically are badly influenced by what I call people who are respectful or level-headed pundits. We all know the real reason why they're level-headed and sit on the fence is because of the rewards.
Exactly.
The rewards are ample. The silver is more than the 30 pieces, so they're going to take it. But are you saying that they're genuinely like that? Some of them are, but the ones aren't know how to play a game. It's a game. New media is an absolute game. It's people are successful on the back of other people's support. People are successful because they know they've got a sixth sense and who they can align themselves to, and they got a sixth sense of what the public would like and how they'll get on. That's all it is. That's the world you're in. You're in a world where you're treating it as like a hobby, and you're using it in order to interact with new people. Some people, it's their life. It's a business.
Yeah. Well, Kenny, I should let you go, I guess. But thank you so much for coming on, mate.
I thoroughly enjoyed it because, talking to you, loads of memories came back, about, like other subplots, Sir Alex and Arsene Wenger, Cantona retiring in 97, the situation with Blackburn's money, the late, God bless his soul, Jack Walker, Norwich, other situations with Paul Merson and his first breakdown, and George Graham and the Bungs. It's all sorts of things that it's all there in the memory bank. But when you actually talk about someone who's there and I get this out of you, you've got a lot of memories out of me. And I've got to be thankful for that. I think that's the reason why they call me.
They had the same experience talking about that game, that final at Liverpool. I hadn't spoken about that for years.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When they say, I've forgotten more about Arsenal than certain people know. I think it's true in that case, isn't it?
It's true. It is true, mate. It is. But Kenny, thank you so much for coming on.
I always enjoy our talks, Warren, and I always enjoy being on panels with you. And I'm glad that you reached out to me. You've reached out to me in the last year, so it has been a success for both of us. For me, I've enjoyed it anyway.
Thank you, mate. Oh, look. Don't forget, everyone, please subscribe. Go and follow Kenny on Instagram. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a YouTube channel yet. I'm trying to persuade him to do it.
I say one thing: if I had a YouTube channel, no one will watch because I'm not level-headed and I don't speak in. I don't dot my I's, cross my T's, and I don't use my vowels. I use more consonants than vowels.
Hey?
I use more consonants than vowels. That's probably what I want. I
honestly, mate, I'd love to see it, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. You do it because you want to do it, mate.
I can imagine it's very time consuming, and it's time consuming. And like I said, the ideas, like there'll be a lot of ideas you have, and then at the 11th hour, you probably think, "No, this is going to be crap. I don't want to do this no more." So you've got to think about more ideas for another show. You know what I mean? And you've got to have like big balls to actually get in a camera and think and put yourself out there.
Yeah. That's true. But Kenny's on Instagram. He is also on Twitter. So please make sure you follow him. He talks a lot of sense. He also appears on the Gunners channel and lots of other ones. But I've got to let him go because he's running late and he needs to go and be somewhere else. So thank you so much, Kenny. All right. We'll chat again soon, mate.
I'm holding you to that. I'm holding you to that.
Exactly. Thank you, Kenny. Take care of yourself, mate.
Look after yourself, mate. Speak soon. Right.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Cheers, Kenny. Bye.
Bye.